All right, so welcome to Pitch Us. This is where we take entrepreneurs, have them pitch us, we give them some feedback, and hopefully you guys can learn a bit of something about when investors like ourselves are listening to pitches. My name's Tim Cooley. I'm the author of the Pitch Deck book, and joining me is Jeff Erickson as host. Jeff, why don't you tell a little bit about yourself and what you're up to?
Yes, my name is Jeff Erickson. I'm currently with a startup company called Forecaster. I'm also an angel investor and a startup advisor, so sit on the advisory board for a number of startups. I love the startup space and excited to hear Nancy's pitch today.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being here. Nancy and I have known each other for a couple years. I've seen the product go through some changes, and so I'm excited to see where she's at today with her pitch. So, Nancy, go ahead and share your screen and then pitch. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to have the opportunity to share what we're doing with you. AquaSeca, our business, we're really removing the barriers to intelligent water management in commercial facilities, and we do it simply by listening. Water costs facilities billions of dollars annually. Now, that's not just water. Water is typically thought of as an inexpensive resource, but that's when water isn't behaving the way it's supposed to, which happens frequently. That means things like leaks, pipes rupture, equipment malfunctions, tenants malfunction, things that cost building damage, interruption of operations, often tenant relocation. Then there's issues around water that simply doesn't move when it should, causes stagnation, an increasing problem across all industries, particularly healthcare, but now it's being regulated everywhere, which means when you have stagnation, you have bacterial growth opportunities in the water, which means your water's unhealthy, and it shuts down places like hotels for multiple months at a time when that happens. And the third category of problem that facilities face is what I call the usage black hole. You know, even though water's always been thought to be inexpensive, it is the fastest increasing rate for any utility across the U.S. and most likely the world. And so water waste, $5 billion annually in commercial buildings, is a significant cost. And there's a real trend towards sustainable usage. But if you don't have the data to know where your water's going, it's almost impossible to have a sustainability program. You know, so this is a very big problem. It's billions of dollars. And so the logical question is, if it's that big of a problem, why hasn't somebody done anything about it? Well, the real issue is, despite that scope of the problem, it's been minimally addressed, and it's simple because the solutions that have been out there have been too complicated, too expensive, too single purpose focused. And at the end of the game, the pain of the problem has been no greater than the pains of the solution. And so that's really stalled the ability to really solve these problems. At AquaSeca, what we've done is we looked at that problem and said, we can change that dynamic. We can make water management a real thing, just like energy efficiency became a thing in the last 2 decades of the 20th century. You know, we've done it with by what I call addressing the 3 C's, providing the broad coverage, providing low cost, and providing convenience of installation. When you do that, then you really change the dynamic. I sometimes correlate this opportunity to what happened in home security systems. Home security systems used to be a niche market where, you know, the systems were complicated, they were expensive, they were monitored at high monthly fees. You know, with the advent of self-installed simple installations, leveraging IoT and some analytics, all of a sudden you got a $54 billion market, not a niche market. That is what we think we can do for commercial water management. So how do we do that? Well, our solution begins with a cloud-based analytics capability, which uses acoustic sensing. So we have an array of acoustic sensors. You can see in the picture, they're small, they strap on a pipe. They're wireless, they're battery powered. And these sensors collect pure passive acoustic data throughout the plumbing. And we have this multi-sensor architecture, which we patented, And it means that each sensor is not listening to the pipe it's attached to. It's listening and corroborating data with all the sensors that are in the periphery of the piping system. And they're combining their knowledge to provide a much richer data source to go to the cloud for analysis. In essence, it allows you to not monitor at the sensor, but to crawl back into the plumbing and see what's happening where you aren't, like behind walls, behind equipment. In essence, we see things that other people can't see by listening, if you will. That data is then transferred through our base station to our cloud analytics. And that's where we use machine learning and proprietary algorithms to characterize data, to do the analysis, to look for the anomalies to expected behavior. And the system continues learning and getting smarter. It makes decisions about what it's heard, and it notifies users as well as provides a very rich usage information so that you can alter how you're actually managing buildings. And when you put that together in a single solution, you address leaks and unexpected events, you solve the issue of stagnation and bacterial growth, and you're able to reduce costs by better managing your water supply. And our solution is remotely upgradable. So the capabilities we have in the system today are, when we install it, the hardware goes in, and after that, any additional capabilities we develop, which at times it seems like are countless opportunities, those can be remotely added to the sensors. So we can expand the level of our customer experience and value, and we can upsell to different levels of service to our customers, increasing our revenue stream from a given customer. How do we make money doing that, which is probably one of the most important things? Well, we have a SaaS-based business model. People subscribe to our service. They don't buy our hardware. And a typical customer for us is going to install roughly 50 systems in one or two, however many buildings they put it in. That means our annual customer contract value is over $50,000. And that's just for perspective. 7 of those sensors you saw on the prior slide with the base station makes a system. The actual cost of that equipment, which the customer doesn't pay for, we amortize is $16,000 one time. So we have a 4-month equipment payback in our SaaS-based model, which allows us to deliver 75 to 85% gross margins. So it's a very profitable business model, and it removes the upfront CapEx requirement for the customer, which allows a much more rapid adoption of the system in the market. It is a big market. If we look at the business-to-business building market, it's a $47 billion TAM. It includes a wide range of buildings from healthcare to hospitality, offices, education, government. Any of those buildings can benefit from this technology. We launched the product, and we're focused initially on the healthcare industry, where we have some truly unique abilities to bring more value than any other solution. No other solution touches it. And then that quickly is expanding as our second market into large office buildings, Class A, Class B offices. We have a plan, which I'll share in a minute, which says our plan only requires us to capture 1% of that SAM by 2025. And that's a pretty modest expectation. Now, when you have a big market and a big problem, there is competition. But historically, for the last 2 to 3 years, with the advent of IoT and all kinds of different things, almost all of the water management, water sustainability work has been done for residences. It's easier. You can do single point sensing. Our real advantage here is from day one, we developed an architecture for this problem designed for complex buildings, large buildings. And so we made sure that this can be rapidly installed and without plumbers, without electricians, that not only you don't have one sensing point, but you can understand usage at every single point in that building. And you can provide broad coverage and identify the location of problems, just not that there is a problem. And then by offering it as a subscription platform, it removes some of the barriers to saying yes in the market. our history of about 3.5 years, 4 years was really initially around proving the science. What we were doing had never been done. We had to prove from a science standpoint it could be done. We filed patents. Patents were granted. We did an alpha. We did a beta. We did a couple of years of field testing and improvements and signed agreements that put us in place to have rapid customer penetration, and culminated that with a commercial release of the product in December of last year. And that initial release went into a hospital, a large university hospital in Illinois, as a proof of concept, added some additional capabilities unique for stagnation detection around temperature. And by the end of that proof of concept in January, the hospital purchased it, and they're now expanding into additional facilities. So where we are today is beginning that rollout. We will install in 4 more healthcare facilities in Q2, at 7 more in Q3, 12 more in Q4. Throughout that, we're driving the issues around volume production, both from a manufacturing and a sales and support standpoint. And then lastly, I will comment on briefly that we do have negotiated an agreement with a $40 billion European home furniture supplies company who want to take this product to their smart home market. So we've done testing diligence, IP validation, privacy validation, and negotiated the contract. Now they are deciding when and how that fits in their product. So whether that becomes an opportunity for us in the next quarter, later in the year or not, it's sitting there as a case where we were selected. It includes a $500,000 development contract and then a license agreement on everything they manufacture with our technology thereafter. Our business, and with the SaaS model, it's a high margin business, a very scalable. We expect to do with recurring revenue about $106,000 this year. So it'll be our first product revenue versus development revenue year. We'll grow that to 2.6 million next year and up to 115 million by 2025. When we get to 2025, we should be delivering a 35% EBITDA. We will take losses in the next 2 years, but we'll go cash positive in the fourth quarter of 2023. So what we're asking is for $750,000 to $1 million on a convertible note. It's a 20% discount, 6% in interest on a $7 million cap. As of today, we have $200K committed. 50K additional came in today since I did that slide. And the use of funds are very specific here. It's what I talked about. It's customer acquisition, scaling support, our current operating expense, and 20% going into inventory build. The opportunity, we've looked at this a lot of ways, and it's a large market with a large opportunity, and it could be a self-sustaining business for a long time, a profitable business. However, we believe that our exit strategy is going to be an acquisition. And there's a number of types of inquirers. We've had conversations with building management companies like JCI or Honeywell, Siemens, smart plumbing companies, people doing water treatment like Garrett Callahan or Suez, and smart home companies, even like an IKEA or a Google or Amazon. So there's a lot of potential there. There have been in the last 2 years 3 significant acquisitions in this space. They've typically had 2 to 3 million in revenue at the time they were acquired, and the average purchase price was between 20 and 35 million. So that's just a flavor of what we've seen in the past. We have a team that's very experienced with both entrepreneurial and multinational, and we all have a proven ability to launch companies and take product from prototypes to volume, both from a manufacturing, sales, and support standpoint. So I'm the CEO. My 2 technical co-founders are Mark Bonneau, who has a PhD out of MIT in data science, and Steve Horn, who's our CTO and probably the best customer-focused engineer at solving customer problems with multidiscipline technologies that I've ever worked with. We put together a board of advisors to cover some additional expertise areas. So the team has been on board working together. We worked together in a prior life. So we came together again on purpose to bring water efficiency to the level that energy efficiency has reached. Thank you so much. I'd be happy to field any questions you have.
Awesome. Great job. Jeff, you have any questions, like just real quick ones?
Great job, Nancy. That was an excellent presentation. I did write down a bunch of questions. I don't know how deep we want to get into them, but
let's ask one or two.
Okay, one question that just popped in my head was you mentioned they're battery operated. What kind of batteries are we talking about, and what's the do you have to go change these periodically, or how
no, they're pretty normal batteries. In fact, if you hold a sensor, 75% of the weight you're holding is the battery. Okay. Everything else is lightweight, but it's a 2 to 3 year battery life. Okay. When the sensors and batteries monitored on the user app, and they know if there's any issues, we know if there's any issues. But with our SaaS-based model, when a sensor needs replaced because the battery low, it's replaced as part of a new contract, or if it doesn't make it to the contract window, we replace it in between.
Okay.
But what we know we can get actually to a 3 to 5 year life, but we're starting with a 2 to 3 year life. Okay.
No, that's great, helpful to understand. The other question I had was, how accurate are you getting with the measurements? I mean, have you had false positives, and have you had others where they haven't detected a problem and they've gone undetected despite the technology?
Yeah.
How reliable is it, I guess?
So I'll approach accuracy from two standpoints. One standpoint is, when we're measuring flow and we're converting acoustics to flow knowledge, if you will. How long has it flowed in that? We are not what I would call revenue grade, right? We don't claim to be a revenue grade product. We think we'll be plus or minus 10% of what's actually occurred from a usage standpoint, which is more than accurate for our mission. And in fact, a lot of multifamily places are interested in using it, saying close enough, we'll go on the low end, right? We'll drop it 10%, and now we know what to charge people versus making it all a lump sum.
Gotcha.
When it comes to false positives, the approach we've taken with this multi-sensor and the corroborating of data has removed almost all false positives. The biggest challenge is a misclassification of a source. So, for example, take a case like water hygiene, where a hospital wants to know if water hasn't run for X amount of time in X amount of hours, say for 1 minute in the last 72 hours, right? We're not going to miss the fact that it happened, but the biggest risk we have is a chance that the analytics would say it was the faucet in room 202, and it turns out it was the shower in room 202. But we've really taken that down to a very low level. That was one of our big challenges initially, is like that source detection. Because if you can do source detection, it's a whole different ballgame. I mean, telling people they have a problem somewhere, and you've got a 100,000 square foot building is maybe nice to know. What do I do for the next 5 days to find it? But when you can do point of use source identification, that's the key. So that will only, and the longer the system's installed, because it's learning, right? If it makes a mistake, you can tell it, no, you were wrong. That wasn't flow, right? That was something else. That was a motor that ran or whatever. Then it never does that again. So there's ability for the user to input if something was different than it said, so that the system continues learning. So a system installed for a year is going to be more accurate than the system installed for a month.
Right. And how many systems do you have installed? Sorry, Tim, I hope I'm not.
No, that's good.
How many existing systems do you have installed, and how many customers to date? I know you said you're going to have 12 customers this year.
So over the course of the last couple of years, I'll say, we've had about 200 sensors in the field. Okay. Those were, alpha or betas, pre-production, whatever. Today, in terms of commercial, our first commercial was the proof of concept at the University Hospital, which included 14 sensors that were monitoring over 35 points of use. So you could see your monitor, you're not doing one per, right? You're monitoring. So, and that hospital's now expanding into, they've got a 150,000 square foot building, and we're going to be rolling it out wing. There's 3 wings on each floor, wing, through 4 floors. So each one of those expansions is adding an additional roughly 50 sensors. Okay. So take that by 7 to 8 systems per wing. Now with that particular hospital, they also want to monitor temperature per room of the pipes, and they're looking for trends in temperature change, because there's 2 things that affect bacterial growth. One is water not moving, and the other is temperatures that are too hot or too cold. And they're not in the safe range. And over time, they start drifting, and they've had no way to tie drift to flow. And it's the 2 of them together that allows them to dramatically reduce their stagnation risks and their bacterial risks. So in cases like that, you end up with more sensors than you'd have, say, in an office building, because Gotcha. They're doing more things. Maybe a long answer to your long question.
No, that's great. Great. Thank you, Nancy.
Fascinating industry. I mean, I think that's one of the things I'd like to talk about a little bit real quick, and then we'll get into some of the feedback is, you guys have the sensor, there's lots of these. How do you stand out, from a marketing point of view versus like flood detection, right? That you kind of are saying the same thing, but like, as investors, we'll hear like what you said, and we'll hear other ideas in a similar space. How are you guys, coming above that? Like I said, flood detection, where it's literally just a monitor that sits on the floor.
Right. I call those hockey pucks. And, it's a little puck there. And if water touches its electronics leads, it used to just go and screech. And now, most of what's happened in this industry is legacy products like that have been made connected, so that now they don't screech, they send an alert to a smartphone or something, right? Mm-hmm. Or they're legacy products where you've added communication capabilities. So it's an enhancement on that. What's really unique for us is when we had two things. One, when we addressed this problem, which was brought to us by one of the founders having a major leak problem that cost him close to $100,000, because those things in your residence, by the way, if they're behind walls, aren't covered by insurance, and moving out for a few months. I mean, that's what drove us to how we would apply the technology. But in this 2 or 3 years, it's become clear that leak detection is just one piece of what really water management is. And, we went after it first because it's the one that hits the bottom line really quickly. And if for a few dollars a day, you can save that $100,000 event, it's a pretty powerful thing. But I think the difference is we architected our solution from the start to be for complex plumbing. So we're not dealing just with pipes or water that ends up on the floor. We're looking to find those problems when they first occur and localize where they are. So within a matter of seconds, you can really reduce the damage. I mean, if the puddles are already forming on the floor, you could reduce the damage, but you've already got a puddle on the floor, right? And by the way, you better predict where that puddle might happen. And if that puddle were to happen behind a wall, in a week or so, or between Friday and Monday, as happened to a large corporate office in Colorado with one of the satellite TV companies, all of a sudden on Sunday, when the security went through, all of the water that leaked on the 4th floor was on the 1st floor. It was $1 million in damage because they had all raised floor with wiring for all the computers, wiped out all the concrete. Anyway, a big mess, and they were self-insured. So don't want to wish ill on anybody, but it was fun to say, but if you'd had our system. To which they could say, but if you'd had it ready, because this was like a year and a half ago when we didn't. So, But that's the real difference. We built this for these complicated things, and you really cannot monitor a complicated architecture from single point sensing. You just can't do it. It's just not going to provide the coverage. And if what coverage you get is going to be specific to, say, leaks, but it's not going to do a thing for water not moving. which in a lot of industries is more catastrophic than a leak. So,
Right.
so it goes to my
Interesting.
three. We're better with coverage, we're better with cost, and we're better with convenience.
Totally. Well, sweet. Well, let's move on to some feedback. Jeff, what are some things you really enjoyed about the presentation?
Okay, so I thought overall the presentation was fantastic. You've obviously done this a couple times. I wrote down a couple things. I mean, just the flow was really good in terms of when I had some questions, it was like the next slide would answer them. And so I thought the flow was very good. The timeline was also, I have also something to note on the timeline, but the good thing about the timeline was I loved how you had kind of put it out there with here's what's happening today and here's what's going on in the future. You broke those two up, and I thought that was well done, well presented. You articulated the problem really well, and thought that was well done. And just like I said, overall, I thought the message was very clear. It was understandable, and I thought you did a great job articulating everything.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Jeff. I think you did a great job outlining the problem early on. It was clear even in our discussion afterwards how your product solves those problems. I think a lot of entrepreneurs really struggle there, and I think you did a great job nailing that. And it's clear you've done this before. You are very articulate, which is really nice to hear on our end. Very exciting space that you're in, huge market opportunity. Yeah, I really, lots of good things. I do have some things that I'd like to help you fix on here. So Jeff, I'll let you take the floor there to go first.
You to give me the first shot here. Okay.
Yeah, or I can go first. It's up to you.
I've got a few things. So,
Okay.
and maybe you probably caught a few of these, but the first slide where you started off, I was trying to read it and I wasn't sure if I should read it or listen to you. And there was a ton of stuff on there. And I saw $750,000. There's the ask. I better catch all this stuff. And you just kind of breezed through it real quick. I actually liked kind of having, an overview of here's where we're going and have it, but you didn't spend any time on it. And so I was kind of like, oh, dang, I missed all the good stuff. So anyways, that was one comment I had. The other thing is on your competition slide, the text was super small on who the competitors were. I didn't pick up on who they were. There was a lot on there. The message was clear that, you had some key advantages over your competition, but the text was just way too small. And then on the timeline, the one thing I noticed was it was missing dates. And so I was kind of lost a little bit on there in terms of, okay, I think you said this was over 3 years heading up to this point, and I'm trying to gauge where that's at. Maybe even just in that bar, you could even put, 2018, 2009, whatever it is.
Yeah, very good point.
And then on the same thing on the flip side, on the next slide where, if you'd put some dates in there, this is when we're going to hit these milestones. That would have been helpful. I will go back and say another good thing was the financials. I thought your financial slides were actually really, really good, and you could back them up with customer numbers. So good job there. That's what I had.
Cool. All right. So some other feedback for you. Your product slide, the one that talks about the solution, I was looking really, really hard to see the product in use. And I noticed it like maybe a minute in that it was actually on the left-hand side of the page, but it looks more like a border than like a demo of the product in place. I think it's because it might be faded or something. I'm not sure why, but you did have it on one of the later slides, but it would have been nice to see the 6-pack, but also like a really clear, maybe even like a picture of it in a closet or whatever the thing's going to be. That would be really nice.
Okay.
I think one thing that can help, the story's great. Moving the financials right, the forecast right after the revenue model, something that I really like to see because we're already talking about it, and you came back to it like maybe 4 or 5 slides later. Another one is I really like when people end with the ask. It's like Jeff mentioned, and that's my fault that Nancy went through it so fast for the beginning slide. Most people are writing things down, but when you end with the ask slide, especially when you start with an ask slide, if you will, it really bookends the conversation, and you don't really need a thank you slide in that case. And also, if you move your team, or the team and opportunity to before the ask, it's just the final thing. It's like, hey, Jeff, do you want to write me a check? Right? It just ends really, really good for everybody in the room. Also, when we're asking questions, I can't remember what your last slide was, but we're like remembering the conversation as you've been telling us when we have all that data on that last slide. That's really, really, it's just sitting in our face. And we're like, oh man, I have another question about, that was another one. And I'd have to see the picture.
Can I ask a question here? Are you talking about having a slide up there that summarizes everything so that they're actually looking at something when they're talking?
Yeah, just use your ask slide.
Okay, okay.
We're looking for, $1 million. That's because usually that has all the information on it already.
Right. Okay, good. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah. Any other questions you have from us? Like hearing some feedback?
Question.
Okay.
So with the belief that this typically should be about 10 minutes, what would you spend less time on? Because I probably was at about 12 or 13, I'm guessing.
Yeah, that's about right.
I would say 12 is the cap on the presentation. If you can get it closer to 10's better. But for me, I would have liked actually a little bit more time on how the product's installed, how it might be used. You could maybe expand on that part of it.
Okay.
I think there might be, it's just some of the, I'm going to call it the details that aren't super necessary. What do you think, Jeff?
Yeah, and I think the other thing, Tim mentioned this before, but putting the revenue slide right after the other metrics there, that might actually cut down on some of the time. Because I remember coming out of that first slide going, wait a second, did I catch what the revenue actually was? You could almost combine those two or at least hit them quickly together.
Okay, good.
Yeah, that's a big one. It's just little things like that. And we like to talk. I think that'll help cut down some of that stuff. I think you can spend a little bit less time maybe in the actual problem and get more to the numbers. Okay. Could help you a little bit. But you did a really good job. I actually wouldn't change that much, to be honest. 12 minutes is not going to kill anybody.
Not fast. There we go.
Yeah. 20 minutes, totally different story.
Okay.
Unless you're on one of those pitch competitions where they have the buzzer or something. And so just be mindful.
I cannot do those. I have to be successful with the one-on-one raises. And
there you go. That's much better.
Not be an auctioneer. So.
Awesome. So the question is, in every pitch, it's really just to get to the next meeting. And the question is, Jeff, if based off what you heard today, would you like to learn more about this venture?
Yeah, Nancy, I think you did a fantastic job in creating interest. You notice I had several questions right out of the gate. So you had me asking the right questions, wanting to learn more. So yeah, I think we'd go into the next stage of let's dig into your financials. Let's see what it means to have 12 customers, where they're coming from, and start getting into that level of detail. So yeah, I would give you a pass.
As would I. We've been known each other for a while, so we've done this already. So, any other questions or ideas for us?
No,
some of the same.
Yeah, I don't have any other, it's just, we're hoping you tell me, take out these 3 slides and you'll be in 10 minutes, but I sort of knew you wouldn't say that. But I appreciate the feedback. The feedback's very good because, as we tell the story, sometimes you tell it so many times that you lose the key takeaways and you bury them in details. And
actually, one more thing, since you mentioned that, how did you guys get involved in this? I would have loved to have known that from the very beginning. Why did you guys go after this? what was your background? Like, what spurred this idea?
You want me to tell you that now?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Certainly. So Steve Horn and I had worked together in our first clean tech adventure, which was in solar. Steve was the co-founder of that company, and I was the 20th employee. I think we grew to about 200 employees before we were done. So I was hired as the SVP of sales and marketing. I knew nothing about clean tech. I actually started as a consultant there for 2 months, and then they offered me this job. And we grew that business in a completely new solar technology to about 30 megawatts in the 7 years we were there. It fell by the wayside, as a lot of technology companies did, when China took the price of silicon solar panels from $5 to 75 cents in about 5 quarters. As a low volume, not yet high volume, couldn't do it, and so we ended up having to sell the technology. But we both were in love with clean tech, so we started saying, hey, what will we do next? And we felt like solar was at a stage where it was going to be, the innovations were going to come in project finance and all of that. They weren't going to come out of technology, and technology advancements were probably 8 years away, and they were going to all start in universities. So we didn't see what to us was glowing fun, right? It was deal making. Not that deal making is bad, but we didn't want to start a startup doing deal making. So we started looking at water, because this whole issue of water efficiency growing to be, a $54 billion business or whatever it is today over 20 years, all happened when electricity became in short supply. We had the digital revolution, data centers needed a lot, and now nobody cared about electricity before, but they cared, and it spun a huge industry. And we felt like water was the most undervalued natural resource we have, and it is the one that we can't make more of. So we started into it around this issue of water analytics, water conservation, clean tech. About 6 months into talking to customers, what would the product be? What are the problems they're solving? I said, everybody wants that. Nobody will pay for that. In the meantime, this leak occurred, and we said, well, whoa, this technology approach we have, using passive acoustics with machine learning, et cetera, keeping it inexpensive and easy, that detects that too. And that's what took us into, leak detection. And then now, 3 years, 4 years later, water efficiency and the need to really know where your water's going is becoming a real big deal. I mean, the Hilton hotels have a mandate to reduce their water usage by 50% by 2030. And they don't know where any of the water goes, because in a typical hotel, they have 2 water meters. So, so it's come back around in a lot of ways to what it started at, but it really came to us out of the correlation between clean energy, the evolution of energy. I mean, the first step in clean energy was reducing usage before we even talked about making green energy. And so we see, and that's why I sometimes draw the analogy, there is no reason that water efficiency business can't be at least half the value in 5 years of what energy efficiency is, 5 to 7. I don't think it will be as big a business, but it'll be 50, 60% of that. So.
Well, cool.
That's how we did what we did.
Awesome. I love it. Well, thank you so much. Jeff, any final words?
No, well, actually, your team is very impressive. I thought that was also a positive. So wanted to give you props there. And then one last comment with your, like I said, I think you passed the due diligence test here, or the initial pitch into due diligence. I've actually got somebody I'd like to introduce you to that might be of interest. In fact, there's a program that you might consider applying for as well. So
okay.
Would love to chat a little bit more. Okay.
Available anytime, almost anytime.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Nancy, for pitching today, and then
the opportunity. It was fun, and it's a story I love to tell, because I think it's a story that can make a lot of people a lot of money.
I think so.